Do you have a dream that is a small seed of an idea and it's ready to sprout?
Or are you in the workplace weeds and you need to bloom in a new creative way?
Perhaps you're ready to embrace and grow a more vibrant, joyful, and authentic life. If you answered yes to any of these, you are ready to rebloom. Welcome to the podcast where we have enlightening chats with nature lovers, makers, and artisans as they share inspiring stories about pivoting to a heart-centered passion.
Hello, I'm Lori Siebert, and I am very curious to hear from friends and artisans about the creativity that blooms when you follow your heart.
And I'm Jamie Jameson, and I want to dig deep into the why behind each courageous leap of faith and walk through new heart-centered gardens.
Each episode of ReBloom will be an in-depth conversation with guests who, through self-discovery, shifted to share their passions with the world.
Get ready to find your creative joy as we plant the seeds for you to rebloom. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ReBloom. I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Hi, Lori. How are you today?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to talk to Mary Jo because I just listened to her on Margot Tantal's Windowsill Chats, which is another great podcast, and she's amazing.
Folks, you are in for the biggest treat today. We're going to talk with Mary Jo Hoffman, who had an incredible rebloom in her life. She was an engineer, probably, I guess she would still say she is an engineer, and not just any kind of engineer, an aerospace engineer. And along the way, she has had a major pivot, and she is now an incredible photographer and has just come out with a beautiful, beautiful new book called Still. And so we are so excited to welcome Mary Jo today. Hi, Mary Jo. How are you?
Hi, Jamie. Hi, Lori. I am great. And I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So, Mary Jo, we are calling you in the middle of a heat wave in the summertime, but you hail from Minnesota, don't you?
Yes. Yep. I'm in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. Yeah. We're having our own little heat wave too here. So we get the same weather as you guys. It moves across the United States usually, and you get about the same weather we had about 2 days ago.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yours is milder. Your weather's milder because of the ocean.
Yeah.
But,
spring is a long time coming to you. And so when does summer start for you actually?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question because, there's meteorological summer, which starts on June on the solstice. There's the meteorological summer that starts on June 1st. There's the astronomical summer that starts on the solstice, June 20th this year. And I actually have, that's a really good question for me. When does summer start? Because for me in the North, I say that for me, spring starts when I see the pussy tail. The pussy willows burst. That's when spring starts. And fall starts when I see the first sumac turning, the staghorn sumacs. And winter usually probably when I see the first skim ice on the swamps in December. So I don't know if I have a specific seasonal transition into summer. And that's a shortcoming on my part. I have to think about that. Maybe when I see the first butterfly, I have to think about it.
You're such a perfect person to have on this podcast that's based on reblooming and pivoting because you pay such close attention to the seasons in nature and you've had many seasons in your life, as we all do. And you were once an aeronautical engineer, which that blows my mind to pivot to what you're doing now. So can you share a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah.
That pivot? Yeah. So it's interesting. I just turned 60.
Happy birthday.
When's your birthday?
Thank you.
When is it?
Thank you. May 22nd.
I just had a birthday too. I thought maybe we were the same day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And So yeah, if you think about it in terms of like 20-year segments, if you think of those first 20 years as becoming, who you are. And then the next 20, I worked as an aerospace engineer. I went through engineering school, and I went into it for no other reason than an aptitude in mathematics. And it made college easy when you're good at math, and it was so much easier to do a problem set for homework than to try and write a paper. And ironically, now I've published a book, which is really ironic because I did spend my whole life avoiding writing papers. So I went into mathematics because I was good at it, and ended up being so good that I got full scholarship to go to Stanford Graduate School in aeronautics and astronautics. And I picked that because it was the most math-based of all the engineerings. And so it wasn't necessarily a calling, but I did enjoy it. I was good at it. And then I practiced it for 17 years. I was in corporate R&D for Honeywell, who does all the avionics for all of our flight vehicles and satellites and space vehicles. And so my group did flight controls. So let's think of autopilots.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
And by the time I left, I was there 17 years, and it was corporate research. And by the time I left, I was director of the lab, and we had people on 4 continents. And I loved what I was doing. I really loved what I was doing. But then my company got acquired, and I didn't really like the new company. It was a big industrial conglomerate, and I wasn't feeling it. And my husband and I had put off because we were having fun, honestly, making corporate kinds of incomes and no kids. We were traveling all over, and we'd put off family planning. So it was time to get serious about that. And by then, when I was director of the lab, I was flying all over the world. And so that doesn't work well for family planning. So I quit, and we changed roles, and he went to work. He had been home with our first daughter, and he went back to work as the primary breadwinner, and I stayed home, and we had another child. And so that's my aerospace career. But then, I was heads down with littles. I found littles really tiring.
They're hard.
Really exhausting. I can't imagine. Anyway, I wasn't looking for anything additional during those years. I felt pretty full up myself. And then, but as soon as my youngest went to elementary school, you have those, what you think is going to be 6 hours a day to yourself, but turns out to be just a couple hours a day,
Yeah.
So it's a couple hours a day to yourself. So I think I had always been like a maker as a kid. I probably in a different household, in a different era, in a household that had maybe some margin, some like financial margin. I would have been a creative kid, but this wasn't, my mom had her hands full, let's just say. And so I had always been a maker and a creative kid, but and then in college I picked up the camera. My roommate introduced me to photography, and I did enjoy that. So I had become a hobbyist, an amateur photographer, which I did those 20 years I was working corporate. And so when my son went to school, elementary school, and I had a few hours a day, it happened when my husband and I had taken a sabbatical from our busy messy, I call them those messy middle years.
Yep.
You got the little kids, multiple careers. I mean, it's
chaos.
Just, to think back about
you
those,
don't even know how you're getting through it. You just do it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we put our life on pause and did a sabbatical in southern France, and in order to put the kids in school and there so they could learn French. And we actually did have 6 hours a day free. So I had said to my husband, let's practice for retirement, because we're in our mid 40s now. He started writing, and I started this photo a day project called Still that we're going to talk about. And both of them, here we are, it's exactly 12 years later, like almost to the date. And he's got a book coming out on July 9th. My book came out on May 1st.
It's incredible.
Both based on those things we started while we were on sabbatical. It is. It's an incredible story. Yeah.
It's incredible. Well, first of all, you started it on January 1st of 2012, which I think you probably should get the Guinness Book of World Records for holding your New Year's resolution the longest, because we all give up. But I'd like you to talk about that resolution that you made, or that thought that you had that day, and also share with us, because there's something beautiful that you talk about in your book about the seasons. And as you said, as we were talking about earlier, we do have seasons of life. I like to think that there are sort of four, I mean, if you're going to simplify it, maybe 4 seasons. Our early years would be like spring, those middle years, 20s, 30s, more like summer, the 40s, 50s, a little more like fall, and maybe retirement, 60s, a little more like winter. But we need to keep growing in all of those seasons. And I love in the book, you talk about micro seasons. And it seems that in 2012, you discovered your own micro season. And you've held on to, but you've continued. Can you start there and tell us about that pivot? Because it's so beautiful. It's a great story.
Yeah. So it's interesting you just say it was a New Year's resolution, because you're absolutely right. I started it on January 1st, and the funny thing is I don't do New Year's resolutions. I don't, because I can't keep them, and I know I can't keep them. So I don't even bother. And to say for 20 years, I'm going to try and lose weight would be ridiculous and boring. So I don't bother. But I did start January 1st, and I didn't stop. It's the interesting thing. When I started the project, it was a 1-year project. So I was going to do a 1-year creative challenge, and I committed to that 1 year. And it's a lot of people join these challenges, these 1-a-day challenges, because that outside accountability is so important when you're sharing with a group. And I'm all for it, and I recommend people do it. I didn't join a group. I didn't need that outside accountability. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't make the year. Once I decided to do the year, I was going to do a year of photos. So I did do that. I started in January in Minnesota, which is really funny to start a nature blog in January in Minnesota.
Talk about winter.
That was not, I thought through a lot of things, and I did not think through that. Found nature in Minnesota in January, and I still had 3 months of winter to get through before things started to happen. So but I did, when I formulated the project, I did have a lot of foresight. I call it dumb luck. People have corrected me and said, no, it was intuitive wisdom. I still feel it was dumb luck. But one of the things I did is I made sure when I formulated the project that and I didn't understand then at the time, I didn't understand anything. I just signed up for a one-a-day project, but I didn't understand at the time, when you make that commitment, you're committing to the process, not to the results.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're just committing to not breaking that chain. And I didn't understand that at the time. But what I did have the foresight to do is make sure that the minimum requirement to not break the chain was very small, so that every day I could do it, even on the days where life happens.
That's really, it's a really important thing. And, very similarly, in 2015, I challenged myself to post a picture on Instagram once a day for a month. And I thought, I don't know that I can do this. And then I thought, I did it for a month. And then I did the same thing. And I thought, all right, I'm going to post every day for a year. I also haven't stopped since 2015. I've been going every single day. Almost 10 years.
9 years.
Almost 10 years. And I love, when I was reading that you had said this, I'm like, oh my God, we're sisters. We're soul sisters. We're chained together by this.
That's fantastic.
Because like you, I felt, and while I'm not photographing every day, I'm posting, or I do a little bit differently with the flowers. I often take them, but I'm still creating every day. And I look at that as I don't know, it's my daily meditation. It's my daily, it's connecting.
Bingo. Yep.
And I was afraid, like the diet in January because I failed it like week 2, that if I stopped, that I would stop. And it's just something that, but the gifts from continuing and keeping that chain alive are just incredible.
Okay, so our story is identical. Should I turn around and start interviewing you? Because our story is exactly the same.
I was just going to share also that I can't stick to anything usually because I like to do so many different things, but I wanted to do the 100-day challenge. So I chose doing Post-it drawings because I thought surely I can do a Post-it drawing every day. And I am not consistent in doing them every day, but I do them inconsistently or whatever. And now I have this whole journal full of them, and they inform all the, like, a lot of work that I'm doing now. So yeah, and I love that idea of process in the journey versus having a perfect solution at the end, because I think people always they stop themselves a lot from the exploration and the play because they want a result that's perfect. And I think like what you're doing, your work just gets better and better and better the more you're in it and trying and doing and playing. You learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I've since I wrote the book and I give a lot of workshops now. And so I talk about the power of these daily challenges. And there's so much science and there's so many reasons why they're effective and why they're powerful and how they override the perfectionist. By shifting that focus from the product, from the results to the process, then the results happen, and they do happen. They happen like by magic on their own. All you're committing to is not breaking the chain. And so it's so powerful, but there's, it overrides perfection. It snaps you out of autopilot. It builds confidence because of that, that daily play. I mean, there's so many reasons why these things work. That's why they're popular.
And you're planting seeds, and you never know what is going to bloom and what's going to grow. And sometimes when I'm speaking with people, I'm like, look, I had no idea at the end of this or in the middle of this that I would be doing X, Y, and Z. That wasn't the goal. It was just to put joy out into the world. It was to share beautiful flowers and to just share some different stories and share my life. But by putting that out there, it led to other things. And you don't know, but just do it. Just put it out there. Allow yourself to be creative.
Put it out there.
You mentioned, you used the word calling, a calling. And I feel like so many times in our conversation that idea pops up, and people might go down a road that they thought they should. I guess yours was because you were good in math. But then I feel like maybe this project is more of a calling for you. Would you say that?
No, it's a good question. It's certainly coming back. Yes, if it's a coming back to myself, for sure. I was a kid that played outside all day. Nature was probably my first love as a kid. And I was a maker, but that just wasn't, in the fabric of our family as I grew up. So I would say it's a coming back into myself and the original joys and interests I had as a child. Is it a call? Like a calling seems like it's something calling from outside, and I feel like but it could be a calling from inside too, I guess. So yes, I would say it is. I do feel like I've come back into myself as a 45-year-old woman.
I feel like though, if you have a math brain, photography is a perfect match for that, because I do not have a math brain. And when I took 4x5 cameras in college, it stressed me out. So I think you've all through your life, you've picked up, your math skills blended with your photography skills, blended with your love of nature, and then put that all together into this beautiful, beautiful book.
Well, and what you see too when you look at this book is you see both right brain and left brain. You see the way that a mathematical mind would work, because things are done in grids, or they're I mean, they're perfect.
Yep.
They're gorgeous. But then you also see, and you see the beautiful art, and you're creating art. So and that's when we talk with people about pivots, when they want to pivot creatively, it seems that that's always missing in their life, that creativity. And when they find it, they realize that that's just as important to them in their daily routine as eating and breathing, and they need that creativity. What is bringing that creativity into your heart and your soul and your day done for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I absolutely, I brought my art. If you look at it, you can see the scientist in there. It is very gridded. It's very, geometric. I love patterns. I like, tessellations, and I love seeing mathematical expressions in nature. They're everywhere. So when I pick a subject, it's often because I like that expression of the mathematics behind it. So you can see I have brought those two things together. I do think the left brain, right brain discussion is fascinating because I like creativity. I believe everybody's creative. I also believe, I know, I'm less confident about this, but I do think we all have left brain and right brain capacities. And for some reason in our culture, we're too young even in childhood, it's mom saying, oh, she's the artistic one and she's the smart one. You know what I mean? Those simple comments where we start to shut down certain pathways, or we start to, focus or overbuild or overdevelop one side of our brain at the expense of the other. I do think many more people, and maybe all of us, are both left brain, right brain when we are born. And then it just gets atrophied over the years. An engineering curriculum, once you get on it, there's no room for liberal arts or art. It's a full schedule. And if you step off the path at all, you're looking at a 5 or 6 year undergraduate program. So it didn't allow any exploration. So, for 7 years of higher education, I overdeveloped one side of my brain, even though I had been a maker as a kid. I love experimentation. I love play. And so that happens to all of us, I think. And I do think that left brain, right brain is more natural, more normal, more common than we think. But I don't know what happens once you overdevelop one side, how to get, how hard it is to get that back.
And it's interesting, though, through the process of you've really been developing that left brain for the past 12 years. I mean, I wouldn't say, it's interesting, and you're right, overdeveloping, underdeveloping, but it's made you so much more aware of the world around you. And I think that's the interesting part too, is when we allow creativity to be part of our life. I know when I really got serious about photography, I started to look at the world completely differently. I looked at shapes. I looked at light. I looked at...
Isn't it awesome?
Opens up an entire new world, because you're not just going through it in a surface way. You're really saying, oh, do I find, where... It could be as simple as looking at textures or patterns, but you begin to see that, and you really begin to see your work. Is that what you noticed as well when you started this?
Is absolutely. Matter of fact, I took a few photography classes when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I just remember those simple exercises where they would say, just go out and photograph blue, just blue. And suddenly the same 4 city blocks that you've lived in for 10 years looks completely different when all you're doing is looking for blue.
Oh, I love that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Try it. Do it today. I mean, go out for a walk after you're done today and just notice blue. I mean, pick a color. Just don't pick it green. See it right now. And you will see your neighborhood completely differently for the next 30 minutes. It's really fun. It's really powerful. So carrying a camera does that. Looking for my subjects, my nature subjects, it's a treasure hunt, right? I mean, I go outside and I'm looking, and I do, ironically, I do exactly that to this day, because If I go outside right now, it's a wall of green outside. It's just green on leaves on leaves on leaves, green on green. It's hard to see past that wall of green to try and find a new subject. And so I will leave the house, walk the dog, leave the house and say, I'm going to only look for orange. I'm just looking for orange today, because I have to do something to narrow my focus. Otherwise, it's overwhelm. It's just overwhelm out there. So I use that. I call it spotlighting technique.
I love to do. I was just in Hilton Head, and we had a boardwalk to the beach, and I love looking for different shapes of leaves. And I know you have grids that show that in your book.
Yes, yes.
And so I would just, on my walk, I would just collect all these different leaf shapes, and then I had my jelly plate with me, so I was doing monoprinting back at the beach house.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of annoying to my family because I'm always like following behind. They're always like, come on, Laura, because I'm looking on the ground and looking in the leaves and looking in the sky. And I feel that is a gift that we have when you do start to notice things that, there's just so much beauty and wonder in nature.
There's so much. And I will say, it's funny. I have the most patient husband. And when we walk, he knows that often I'm going to stop and photograph something, especially if it's a flower. And I was fortunate to listen to a National Geographic photographer one time. And he said, everybody's so busy looking at the sunsets or the sunrise. And he said, turn around and look what it's shining on. And because I'm always looking for light. How is the light hitting something?
Yeah.
And that was one of the best pieces of advice. So every time, it's funny, my husband will even, when we're watching the sunset, he'll say, look around, look at the clouds. Like he's always spinning me around. And
turn around.
And I love that. And I think it's interesting. We are doing that now in our creative brains, but we also get our family to start looking at stuff too. And they see things differently. And I think you bring them into the mix. And I know you talked about your own children. I know my children have been brought into the fold of what I've done. And I love that they see things creatively. Their friends love it that I do things in a creative way. I know Lori's do as well. Talk about your kids in this journey too.
Yeah. The project, and I picked nature. Well, I'm a nature lover, but the whole family is. And we live in a 3-acre wooded lot. So nature made the most sense. But the kids got on board right away because I had to find a daily subject. It really was a treasure hunt, right? I mean, I was walking the dog while they were in school, but often my kids for middle school, they could bike to school. My son would be coming home down the driveway with something dangling from his fingers, on the handlebars because he
found something,
found something on the sidewalk. So they understood the fun of it, the fun of finding, the fun of noticing. And then as they got older, 12 years is a long time. My son is 20 now. He was 8 when I started. Wow. I mean, imagine that. Wow. I mean, he was just that little Christopher Robin looking, 8-year-old. Now he's 6'3" and 20 years old. But my daughter, they started with helping me find, and they're cute because they knew how much I liked seed pods.
I love seed pods.
Lori, Lori, you like your shapes of leaves. I like seed pods, and I will stop for a seed pod anywhere. And so the kids know that. And so we can be driving and somebody will yell seed pods, So anyway, the kids really got into it. And then eventually my daughter got into helping me with composition.
That's great.
And now she's a designer. Great. So yeah, the funny thing too is the cover of my book. That was my son's composition. I love it. I can't even take credit for it. I had all sorts of specimens laying on a table and things pile up. And then every few weeks I just sweep them all up and throw them back outside. And I'd said, he was probably 12 or something. I said, Joe, help me with a composition. And he never would, he just would walk past. And so one day he stopped and he walked around the table and he just picked up a dozen items and he put it on my white paper. And I said, oh my gosh, those are big because the colors were harmonious. And I said, how did you do that? And he said, oh, I just picked the most interesting shapes and then walked away.
Awesome.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Out of the mouths of babes.
I know. And that's the cover of my book. I mean, it's amazing.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and UrbanStems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention ReBloom. And a huge thanks to UrbanStems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ReBloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today.
I love how you talked on Margot's podcast about how raising creative children, and you did that because you were modeling it. And our little 5-year-old grandson, he'll often come home with weird things in his pockets because he walks around the playground and he puts things in his pockets, and Enzi will unload, and she's like, "What is all this stuff?" He goes, "Well, I have to put the stuff in there for my projects because if I don't put it in my pocket, the teacher will throw it away." So he and I'm like, I just crack up because I'm so like that, and my daughter is not. Like she's very creative,
Yeah.
but she's also, she likes a little bit things neater. So him bringing home this oddball stuff every day.
He's a collector
totally.
already. I love it. I love how you can see all that.
It's so
young.
funny.
With my book, what's interesting is the number of people that are DMing me that how much their grandchildren are enjoying it and reacting to it, and how much they're enjoying seeing their grandchildren
you just love
react to the
that?
book.
That you're inspiring
I love
in
it.
so many people.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I got a download of photos the other day. A woman that had shown her grandson my book. They went foraging, and they came home and made compositions at the dining room table. And then he was only a young kid because he could barely hold the camera, but he needed to take pictures.
That's amazing.
Of it. It was adorable.
I'm totally going to do this with Holden and Nash because they will.
Yeah,
you've created a movement. It's not just a book. It's a connection. Yeah.
You're connecting people through nature. You're showing us how to be treasure hunters. You're showing us how to connect to, and I love it, to connect to the things that are common but are still yet beautiful. It's finding the beauty in. I mean, I love the things that are discarded. I love too that you talk about. It's not just the full bloom. It's the bud. I dry peonies. Well, I absolutely adore peonies, and they're gorgeous to photograph, but I dry all of them. I find them as gorgeous as the blooms themselves,
right?
For a completely different reason. And so I love that you're finding things that are dried, things that have passed. I mean, you're showing us the beauty in all of the seasons of nature. And it's amazing.
Yeah, if you do this every day for 12 years, you get. I mean, honestly, you get bored with the perfect peony.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a peony is gorgeous. I love it too. It's one of my favorite flowers. But at some point, and then you for me, peony buds are fascinating. They, they look like those shooter marbles.
They do.
You remember shooter
with
marbles?
The ants on them too, and the sticky, and I love them. I love them.
Yeah. So anyway, for me, it was out of necessity because I had to fill every day, and so I couldn't always just do things in peak form. But then it was very quick where I realized, oh, this is more interesting than So I'm actually photographing peonies spring, summer, winter, because the seed pods are awesome too, right? The seed pods are fantastic. So I'm photographing them out of necessity for through every season of the year. But and then you realize, oh, they're almost more interesting in these other seasons.
They really are. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit to one of the things that you talk about in your book is your as a photographer, you shoot on white and you shoot on a white background. And then you kind of pivoted a little bit and you were shooting on black, and then you were getting some, the experts, we'll call them, don't do this, do that, do this. Right. How do you both, and sort of two parts, two questions, own your own style and say, okay, great. There's going to be all these other voices going on. How do I own it? But also, how do you continue to grow and evolve? Because to your point, we sometimes do get bored. I've been doing it for 8-9 years too. I get it. I get the need to pivot and grow. Yeah. So owning your style and growth within it.
Yeah. So I wasn't a professional photographer, and I do think that naivete was to my advantage. I mentioned my husband's publishing a book. He started by writing food articles for magazines, and he wasn't trained as a journalist. And I think that worked to his advantage. He came in with a completely different voice they'd never seen before because he didn't know the rules of short form writing. So I do think, so when people say I got to take a class first, I'm a little bit like, take classes for sure. I get inspired by classes. I teach workshops, but also like that naivete, it's a powerful thing. So anyways, I started on photographing on white, and I had several people after I started, and I picked white because I'm a minimalist. I like Scandinavian design. My house is painted white, therefore I could use the floors and the walls as my studio. And it was practical. It was also my aesthetic. And after I started the project and I started showing professional photographers, they are all like, well, this will be dismissed as commercial art. This isn't fine art. This is commercial art. And I said, well, commercial art, fine art, I didn't even know there was a distinction, and I'm just doing a creative project. Like, I don't, what I mean? Yeah. Like but I think had I been a photographer, that would have shut me down. I mean, I think it would have shut me down. So my ignorance was actually strength at that time. But yeah, I shoot on the bright white background. It's an interesting thing. And I have never talked about this on any podcast about why I've stuck with it because, like you, it became a mindfulness practice that I don't want to quit. It became a way of living in the world that was so life enhancing that I don't want to quit. But I haven't changed my style much in 12 years. I'm not bored, because nature is infinitely deep, right? You could never run out of subjects and to photograph. But also I have this, I think that if you look at art history, it's, we all know woefully there's a lack of female artists, right? And that it's for all sorts of reasons. We didn't, we weren't allowed into art schools. All the editors and all the critics were male, blah, blah, blah. And yet at the same time, when I look at the history of art and artists, and I read a lot of art biographies, and I'm going to, I'm a little anxious here because I think I've never said this out loud, and I might, if I don't say it right, I'm going to offend some people here. But if you look, I feel like women artists, and even the ones who have made it into art history, especially if you include design in there, like the Annie Elbers and the, all of them, we tend to work in a lot of different mediums, right? So we may be a weaver, a textile artist, but we also do a little painting or design, and we also do a little ceramics, or we tend to work in a lot of different mediums. And so it's hard to build up a body of work in any one of those, a body of work that is a signature of your style. So
that
you know what I mean?
Interesting.
And so I recognized that and said, I'm going to stick with one style and build a body of work. I mean, building a body of work was a goal from early on. And so I have a style, when people see my images, they know it's mine.
It's interesting that you say that. And I know Lori's going to jump in here too. Lori does different mediums because she is a beautiful artist, and she has the talent to do it in all these different mediums. And I want you to talk about that, Lori. But it's interesting that you mentioned that. I classify myself as a floral photographer. And people would say, well, what is that? I'm like, well, I just take pictures of flowers. Again, the naivete, I made it up. And I started down that path. I'm like, well, flowers bring me joy. I like to show off flowers and antiques, and this is my style. And I love when people say, I see your photo. I knew it was you before I even saw that it was yours. That is a gift to me. But I had a lot of people along the way say, oh, you need to diversify. And I do take pictures of food. I'm a product photographer. I do that for others. But I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. I want to just keep growing. Yeah. This is what I love. And I love to take pictures of flowers, and I'm going to keep doing it. And it's funny, just by doing that, it's created this whole body of work. So
it hangs together as a whole, and it's recognizable as you.
It is.
As coming from you.
And I think we need to be proud of that. And yet, and sometimes I think we all feel, I think it's also women, we feel we're pulled in all these different directions, and we're sometimes chasing something. We're either chasing a monetary something, or we're chasing, maybe it is to fulfill a need. But I think if you follow your heart and you say, no, I'm just going to do this. And then, I look at every single one of these pictures, and it's not your photos. And I think, I know that they're yours. I wouldn't want to replicate them because they're yours. This is your style. But what it does is inspire me on my own to say, oh, well, let's look a little deeper in how you look at your own photographs. And I think when we share that from others, I know Lori's been dying to say something too. Go ahead.
Well, I've been through this whole question in my brain forever because as in licensing art, I always thought that you had to have a signature style. And, people that were really successful in it were like Mary Engelbreit. She has a signature style.
She does.
But I sort of came, for me, to knowing myself and knowing what makes me tick. And it's different for everyone. I cannot stick to one single style for forever because I'm just a very curious person. And I am one of those people that like to do a little this, a little of that. But that being said, I'm now sort of figuring out little micro projects within that. So one is the Post-it notes where I have some continuity there. Another is I've started painting over these magazine pages, and I'm doing that kind of consistently. And I'm really liking the blend of both, like trying different things, but within each of those kind of sticking to something. Because I feel like when I do that, I'm learning so much by the repetition of like these magazine pages. Each time I do one, I try something different, and I'm learning each time, and I'm building that, it's just going to be a journal full of images. So I think it's just for every person, it's different. But like, I look at artists like yourself who have 12 years of consistency, and I kind of I'm very inspired by that. And there was an artist I followed years ago, Jennifer Orkin Lewis, who was painting in her journal every single day. And I would look at her stacks of journals, and I'd be like, I want to have that someday. So I'm finally starting to maybe let go of some of the exploration and narrowing down a little bit. And I do feel it's helpful to grow and learn when you're doing that.
Yeah. Let me clarify what I was saying there. I'm not, because I agree with you. I too, I do my photo a day, but I'm a collage artist. I have journals full of collage. And, if you look at what I do with my found nature on my white background, it's no different than collage, right? It's very similar. One's just paper ephemera and one's nature ephemera, but otherwise I'm making compositions. It's very similar. So I'm just saying that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, trying different media and in exploration. And I'm actually going into a phase now that I'm finally an empty nester, that I'm going to go back into that sort of opening up the doors a little bit exploration phase. But I'm saying, if you look at those men that got written up in art history, they often often when they were younger had those exploration years, right? And it's always curious to me, almost every artist, visual artist, at some point goes through a phase where they do collage, all of them. Picasso, everybody's done it. But then at some point they fix on an expression, a form of expression, and then they just, they gnaw it to death, right? They just explore it to death, and then they move on. Sometimes they become known just for that. Calder with his, with his mobiles and the cut metal, but then some of them, like Picasso, who had this incredible 80, 90-year career, gets to have
multiple,
4 or 5 of those periods. But they get to a thing they like, and that doesn't mean they're not also still doing their collage or still doing their explorations, but they're taking that one thing and committing to exhausting it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Taking it as far as they can until they're not learning anything more from it. You know what I mean? And I feel like as women that we might be better served as artists. I don't know. I don't want to say better. It's just a different approach, which is we tend to go bride. We like to do a little weaving. We like to do a little ceramics. But I'm saying maybe in addition to that, commit to one of them and exhaust it, for yourself, whatever that means.
And I think for some of the new artists out there, I know my own journey started with, I took a watercolor class, and it was for nurses in crisis. I'm not a nurse. I wasn't in crisis at the time, but I was like, oh, my friend said, there's an extra seat. Want to come? And I'm like, sure. And if you know me, I'm like, I'll be like, oh, I'm a watercolor artist. Okay, that was after one class. Oh, dear God. I was a terrible watercolor artist. I was terrible. But what it did was it opened up the world of creativity to me. I knew that was missing in my life. And then I started exploring, and I explored that. To your point, I kind of explored that and went, okay, we need to pivot. So then I pivoted to more of a mixed media. And then I pivoted a little bit more to photography. And that led me to where I am today. And then I've been able to double down on where I am. And, so sometimes and what you're saying is, I think we're all saying it is try, for sure, try, but do allow yourself to go deeper. Let yourself go deep in the process.
And at least one of those medium, just, it helps I think, to exhaust something like that. We all know creativity thrives in constraints. And so as you exhaust a subject, it's going to force you to get more and more creative as you exhaust all of the obvious things you can do in that medium. And then, so I think there's reason to try it. I just, for me, it was looking at the history of art and art history and saying, there's a lot of reasons why it's mostly men, and we are trying to correct it now. But there was also a difference in the way women made art and the way men did. And men did it in a way with these building these bodies of work around a singular subject or a singular idea or concept that allowed it easier to slot into the narrative of art history. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge power, and you talk about this in your book, which I'm going to circle back to, in the dailiness, the power of showing up daily. And I'm going to read a quote that you put in the book, and it's from Jerry Saltz. And it says, "The time and the process of your work is sacred. Your work is something else. It's not sacred or some holy relic. It probably has flaws. It probably has flaws. That's my writing, not yours. It probably has flaws. Your work is a doorway. Your art raised you." You want to talk about that a little bit? Because that is a powerful, powerful quote.
Yeah. It's back to the idea that the process is sacred. The results are not. And I learned so much from this 12-year project. And, I don't even know. I stumbled because I just gave a 3-hour lecture on some of the things I learned from this project for the 92nd Street Y. So it's hard to, decide what to summarize in 5 minutes. But So it was the power of this power of dailiness, but this idea that the process is sacred was one of the profound insights. And it just, if we, because so many creatives are shut down by perfectionism or shut down by the inner critic. I don't really have an inner critic so much, but my husband has one, and if you can shift the focus from the product and put that focus over on the process, suddenly you've done a end run around that inner critic and you've shut down the perfectionist, and it's so powerful. And the thing that you have to do one of these projects to learn is that products are guaranteed.
Yes.
Like they will come from the process, but you're not going to look over there at the shelf full of finished art. You're going to look over here at your calendar on the wall, and you're going to make sure you don't break. You're going to put an X every day on the day that you made art, and you're just going to make sure you don't break the chain. And if you just keep your eye on that wall and not break the chain, like that shelf or that studio or that, journal full of art will happen. It happens like as if by magic. That's what's sacred. And that's what Jerry's saying there. The results aren't in your control. Right. You know what I mean? They're not in your control. And so quit perseverating over them. Just commit to just showing up every day and not breaking the chain.
And commit for you, commit for your heart, commit for your soul, not commit for others, not commit for likes on social media, commit for you. And that commitment. And that's, it's interesting by doing the florals, Lori has to license. And when you work for a client, and when I work for clients as a photographer, you do what they want you to do. When I do my florals, when you do your compositions, they're for you. And it's for me. And I'm like,
you're absolutely.
Oh, nobody else likes this? I don't care. I like it. It makes me happy. And but it's the process of being up there that gives me the space and the joy. And that is.
Yeah. I mean, we're using the word commitment, and it's maybe it's like a scary word. Yeah. It's like, New Year's commitment. It's not at this point, it's not something I have to work myself up to. I can't wait to do this again tomorrow. You know what I mean? So, and that would be a word of advice for people that want to try this. If it feels like, if you're into it and it's 30 days, it's 15, 17 days, and it feels like work, go ahead, give yourself permission. That wasn't your medium. That wasn't your expression. Right. Try a different one. It should feel like play. It really should feel like play. In which case, it's not. Yes, I'm committed to not breaking the chain, but it's not work. Right. It's play. I'm committed to playing every day. I mean, that's what I'm committed to. Yeah.
I love it. And that is the best. Commit to play, commit to create.
Yeah.
And I think if you make that commitment to make that a part of your daily routine, again, it's like brushing your teeth. We commit to brushing our teeth. We commit to trying to do, to getting fresh air or to exercise. And you're right, commit is the wrong word. Maybe it's just embrace. Embracing creativity each day. I think if we allow that to be part of our day, it just opens up so much more. Embracing fun. And to your point, I love if it feels unnatural, if it feels forced, it won't work. It's got to feel organic. Right. Some people can run 10 miles every day. Not me. I can walk a couple miles every day and I love it. That feels very natural to me. It should feel very natural.
It should feel natural. Exactly. And sports fitness is a perfect analogy. Yeah. We're not all pickleball players. We're not all aqua aerobicists. We're not, but try them all till you find the thing so that when you get up to go do it, it feels more like fun than like drudgery. And I think that, for creative expression, it's super similar.
As we kind of wrap up our chat with you, although I think Lori and I could talk to you for another hours,
hours.
hours
I know
and
we could
hours.
easily, especially now that you spilled the beans that you've been doing your daily project for 10
And it's
years.
been phenomenal. And, but as we think about, I guess I'm going to ask you to leave our listeners with, I don't know, a few of the greatest gifts from doing still for the past 12 years. What are a few of your, I mean, we've talked about a lot, but I don't know, advice or a gift that
Yeah.
you would like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. So, we did talk about a lot. I think the biggest insights was the process is what's sacred, and commit to the process, and don't worry about the results; they'll happen. And also that the dailiness, this committing to dailiness is works and it's profound. And however if you're stuck or you want a new direction, you want to get re-inspired, try a daily challenge. It will throw sparks in directions you won't have anticipated. And then the third, I would say, is just, for me personally, coming back to nature. As, so many artists in the end ultimately use nature as their, say nature as their inspiration. And like I said, I could do this for the rest of my life. Nature's infinite. I will never exhaust the beauty of nature. And so if you're wanting to try something, looking for a new start or a new direction, maybe tapping back into your natural environment. One of the big insights for me was that this idea of placefulness, and we don't have time to talk about it, but when you're living in a place in this heightened sense of attentiveness, it and start to have this sort of a much more nuanced and a much more detailed and intimate relationship with wherever you are. That's also very life enhancing and life affirming. So maybe, if you don't know where to turn towards nature as an inspiration. I'll leave it at that.
Love it. That is the perfect way to end. We cannot thank you enough. Thank you for your time. For our listeners out there, her book is Still. It is available. We will have the links available for you. I would say run, don't walk, buy several copies, get them as gifts. They are going to make the most incredible gift. And if you have children or grandchildren or someone who loves nature, or someone who just loves to look at a beautiful book, this is the one that you're going to put out. You're going to look through it. It's going to let you breathe. It's going to let you dream. It's going to just be the most gorgeous thing. It's going to be a gift to yourself and a beautiful gift to others. And Mary Jo, you are a gift to us. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was so much fun. This was really a lot of fun.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Lori.
I don't even know where to begin, Lori, about this interview and chatting with Mary Jo. That was the most powerful hour I think I've spent in the longest time.
She is so wise in so many different ways. And there were a few things that really stuck with me. One was when she spoke about how labels get put on us very early on, and then we tend to just overdevelop whatever that thing is. So I was thinking about my grandsons because I can see it happening already in them,
Yeah.
Nash was always painting and drawing and things, but now he's like, oh, Holden's the better artist. I'm the athlete.
Right.
So that really stuck with me. The other thing was that so many of us shut down our play and our exploration for fear of not achieving perfection. And that the fact that she does a daily project where, some days the end result is not going to be that great, but that's okay because it's really more about showing up, doing the thing, continuing to play and explore and learn. I love that.
100%. And, there's that saying of dance as if no one is watching you.
Right.
How about you create as if no one else is going to see it?
Yeah.
Just create to create and have fun. And sure, if you have enough courage to put something out there on social media or show it to your family or your friends, fabulous. but just create to create. And I love that. And really pursue one particular something as long as you can. And if you need to pivot from that, pivot, but just enjoy it. And I loved that too. But her book is phenomenal. It really touched my life. I'm just so inspired by it. And I know our listeners are just going to love it. And what a chat.
Well, and I'm sure that when she first started this practice, she didn't know that she would end up with this gorgeous book 12 years down the road.
No.
She just wanted to commit to something that was creative for a year because she just wanted to explore that process, and then decided to stick with it because it became part of her day, her ritual, her, mindfulness practice. So, you don't have to start out knowing that it's going to end up in this grandiose place. It can just be sowing these little seeds that just keep growing and growing, and then they grow into something that you never really even dreamed about.
You never imagined. And I always say, when I started too, and we talked about it, don't look at the big full garden. It takes a lot to grow that garden. It takes different seeds. You've got to try different things. And then yes, you may want a garden at the end, but you may have that as your visual, but have fun growing it along the way. Just have fun along the way, and don't get so caught up in the end result, but enjoy the process of growing over time too. Well, this has been incredible. I hope our listeners have enjoyed it. Until next time, peace, love, and rebloom. Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of ReBloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.